What is a restraining order? A restraining order is a civil or criminal court order that may help protect a person from being physically abused, threatened, stalked, or harassed. Two categories. There are two categories of restraining orders. One, civil, and two, criminal. There are 5 common types of restraining orders. 4 types in the civil category and 1 type in the criminal category. 4 types of civil restraining orders. Within the civil category of restraining orders, there are 4 types. 1. Domestic violence restraining orders. 2. Civil harassment restraining orders. 3. Elder or dependent adult abuse restraining orders. And last, workplace violence restraining orders. Domestic violence restraining order. The domestic violence restraining order is issued in family law court. The other civil restraining orders are issued by civil, non-family law court. Emergency protective orders, also known as stay-away orders. Emergency protective orders. If you believe you are in danger, any police officer can help you obtain a criminal emergency protective order. These can be used to protect you at home or at work. They only last up to 7 days. If you want protection for longer than 7 days, you must ask the criminal court judge to reissue the emergency protective order. You should use the 7 days under the emergency protective order to obtain the right civil restraining order you require. Domestic violence restraining order. Domestic violence means there has been violence or abuse in a family, a home, or between people who have a close relationship. This abuse can be physical, sexual, or verbal. The victim requests the domestic violence restraining order in the family law court. Civil harassment restraining order. Harassment is violence, threat of violence, abuse, threat of abuse, stalking, or actions that seriously scare and annoy you, done intentionally and for no valid reason, by someone you have not dated and do not have a close relationship with, like a neighbor, a roommate, or a friend that you've never dated. As opposed to domestic violence restraining orders, civil harassment restraining orders can be used to protect you from people like roommates, neighbors, and coworkers. Elder or dependent adult abuse restraining order. These adult or dependent adult abuse restraining orders are for people 65 years old or older, or are between the ages of 18 and 64 years old and have certain disabilities, who are a victim of physical or financial abuse, neglect, abandonment, or treatment that has physically or mentally hurt them. Workplace violence restraining order. These are workplace violence restraining orders for employers who want a restraining order to protect an employee who has suffered violence or real threat of violence at the workplace. A special note, an employee who wants to get individual protection at work needs to get his or her own civil harassment restraining order. Takeaways. There are 4 types of temporary civil restraining orders and 1 type of emergency criminal protective orders. The 4 civil types of restraining orders are as follows. 1. Domestic violence restraining orders. 2. Civil harassment restraining orders. 3. Elder abuse restraining orders. And 4. Workplace violence restraining orders. Last, there's 1 criminal emergency protective order, also known as EPO, which is a transitional court order to give the alleged victim time to obtain the requested civil restraining order relief. The domestic violence restraining orders are issued by the family law court. Some events are so severe that the state will file criminal charges against the alleged perpetrator as a misdemeanor or a felony. Caveat: fairly recently, Sacramento has introduced gun violence restraining orders.